Marketing podcast is brought to you by me, Amanda Bear. We'll talk about topics that you don't normally read about in marketing literature that tell you more about the what, but not the how of marketing in the real world. You'll hear great conversations with leaders and up-and-comers who intersect with marketing and have been testing and learning and paving the way every day. Visit futurefitmarketing.com.au for access to resources and past episodes. There are foundational skills you build in marketing that can apply to many facets of life and career adjacencies. For example, research, understanding motivations and pain points, positioning and key messaging, setting goals, testing and learning are just to name a few. Marketers spend much of their time figuring out the why, the what, and the how of the business they represent, and then influencing consumers to take action. But how can you apply the same rigour to your own career building? So think about this. If you've ever felt stuck in your career, it could be you don't feel quite right in your role, you don't quite gel with your boss, you're not passionate about the industry you're in, there's something missing, and you feel like you might be destined for something more meaningful. Well, if you apply the principles of marketing, it starts with research. Understanding the building blocks that make up you as a person, your strengths, your fears, your values, what makes you happy. If you can clearly identify what you really want and then start to craft a narrative to articulate this and then commit to a course of action, you'll be well on the path to getting that fulfilling career you always wanted, even if it's not immediately obvious. And the people surrounding you will be better able to support you get there. Someone who has trodden this path before is Alex Crompton, an accredited coach and founder of Headway Coaching Australia, a career coaching company that specialises in using the latest psychology tools to help people uncover their unique strengths and plan a career that matches their personality, maximising their chances of success, happiness and fulfilment. He helps people answer that question, what do you really want to do? Prior to becoming a coach, Alex spent more than 20 years as a senior leader of teams responsible for marketing, customer experience and digital in IT, telco, agencies and financial services working across USA, the UK, Japan and Australia. I'm very excited to introduce all of you to Alex Crompton, who is a great leader, both in marketing and has pivoted a lot in terms of his career. So I would love to hear from Alex. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Amanda. It's a real privilege to be here talking to you and all of your listeners today.
Fantastic. So let's get started. Maybe before we dive into a few questions, tell us a bit about you and about your background.
Sure. So I went to school and university in the UK. I'm a POM. You can probably tell that by the accent. I've been here for about 15 years and came out of university with a very traditionally English qualification, which was a very niche degree that didn't really qualify me to do anything. So English literature, specializing in film studies and Shakespearean tragedies, not
love it.
a particularly classic background to what I do now or marketing, but we're certainly all in the arts and communications world. I then got a job in effectively a development role. I was doing coding for a couple of years, and I decided pretty quickly that wasn't my future. And I was very lucky. The business that I was working in was just getting into digital marketing for the first time. Mm-hmm. This is sort of like 2001, 2002. So was able to jump into digital marketing, and that kind of led me into 20 years of marketing. Starting in digital, always having a development background, working a lot in platforms and development, but then getting into digital marketing communications. And then when I moved to Australia in 2007, getting into full service marketing and broad marketing roles in lots of different industries. So been incredibly lucky and worked for some amazing businesses in lots of different countries. I worked in the UK, obviously, but I also worked in America for a part of Hitachi. And then also, obviously, working here for some multinationals and also some smaller businesses. So I feel like I've had a good mix of different types of businesses.
Now, don't be modest, because you work for some great brands. You mentioned Hitachi, but also, Commonwealth Bank, Aussie Home Loans, and Ubank as well, leading marketing. So, great caliber of both brands and experience as well. So why don't you tell the listeners what you're actually doing now?
So right now, I'm actually running my own business. And the business that I founded a couple of years ago, which I've been growing over the last couple of years, is called Headway Coaching. The idea behind the business is that there are so many different options and so many different directions out there that we can go in. Sometimes it's incredibly hard to know what the best one to choose is. A lot of people in the industry right now talk to me about how hard the industry is and how many challenges there are, everything from technology to budget cuts to consolidation of agencies and everything that's going on right now. It's a tough place to be. But what I found is that I had an experience over the last 10 years, sort of behind the scenes, a bit of a secret squirrel project I was working on, that really trained and taught me over that period that there are some really fundamental gaps in the way that we help people to understand what they should be doing with their careers. And what I mean by that is what actually suits them as an individual. We're all individual people with individual personalities that are a result of both our genetics and our experiences in life. And there's this huge gap. There's this massive gap at the end of school and university where most people just sort of fall into something. They don't really put a lot of thought, and they don't really get great guidance on what is really going to suit them as an individual. And throughout my marketing career, what I found was that so many people were struggling in their role, or not really enjoying their role, or just not getting the fulfillment that they were looking for from their role, because they were just fundamentally doing the wrong things. They're in the wrong job. And through my training in my marketing career, and then subsequently my executive coach training, I've been able to develop a way of actually answering that question. Because the hardest question in the world, right, is what do you really want? And you've got no chance of getting what you really want unless, number one, you know what it is, and number two, you can clearly articulate it to someone who can help you to get it. And so the coaching business that I'm building is really centered around answering that one question for people. What is it that they really want to do? Because from that, there are always options. There's always ways to achieve it. I've never had a client who answered that question and then was completely stuck. They have always, with my help, been able to find a way to get there. And it's an incredibly fascinating space to be working in.
I have so many questions for you right now, but I have to keep this focus, right? So how did you get there with the marketing background and the realization that you might be able to do something a little bit more existential, helping people, the coaching side of things? Tell me how you got there.
Like most great things that happen in life, it was a bit of an accident. So about 10 years ago, I was selected to go on Com Leader, which is the Commonwealth Bank leadership course. And it's an incredible course, and met some amazing people. Part of that course was coach training, because one of the things that is still kind of struggling to break out in most organizations is the role of a leader, any leader, marketing leader, product leader, marketing leader that I was at the time, as a coach of your people. And what happened was I ended up doing a couple of coaching courses as part of that program with an amazing fellow named Professor Anthony Grant. Tony was the most wonderful person. Sadly, we lost him a couple of years ago to cancer. But he was this most wonderful man, and was the lead of the coaching psychology program at Sydney University. And I went into that coaching experience one person, and I came out a different person. I came home and I remember saying to my wife, "Oh my God, I've just done the most amazing course I've ever done." and talking to her for hours about all the things that I'd learned about psychology and leadership and management and people and motivation and how the brain works. And it was in that moment, there was a tiny little seed planted in my head, which was, God, imagine if I could do that for a living. Imagine if I could actually coach people and do something which is universally positive, because everything that we do is strengths-based and everything that we do makes people's lives and careers better. Imagine if I could do that for a living. And then what I did is I do what everybody does, which I rationalized the fact that that wasn't possible, that I needed to stick in my job. I needed to earn the money to pay the bills and the mortgage. And, we had 2 kids at that point, and I couldn't possibly do anything, as crazy as start my own coaching company. And so I went back to the day job. The problem with that is that I think that once you have that type of thought, it doesn't go away. And what I found was over time, I was actually building this business in my head as I was doing my job. And then about 5 years ago, I started self-funding my executive coach training. And I did 3 years of training and started the business a couple of years ago, when I got to the point where I couldn't not do it. It had to be part of my life. I knew it may not be the only thing that I ever do, but I knew that it had to be a massive part of my life because I just felt such a calling to do it.
To actually then make that transition into an actual full-time job, you have to have a lot of things in place, a supportive wife being one. Tell me, when did you actually decide I have to make the switch and it's going to be a full 180? How did that look? What did you have to put into place?
Look, it's a great question. I think it's a triumph of optimism over doubt. I think, any change like that has to be, because let's look at the statistics for small businesses. Let's look at the amount of people on LinkedIn who claim that they're a coach. This is one of the things I talk to people about a lot. I think, it would be a lot more helpful if there was a rule against saying you were a coach unless you actually had coach training, because you can't claim to be a doctor unless you've been to medical school. I don't think you should be able to claim that you're a coach unless you've had coach training. And so what really happened for me was I said, right, look, if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to half-ass it. I'm not going to do it, an average job here. If I'm going to do this, and if people are going to trust me, I need to do this to the absolute best of my ability, which means you have to get training. I was very lucky because the Institute of Executive Coaching and Leadership here in Sydney is an incredible place to train. I started training there while I was still working in my day job. And what you do is you go and do the courses, and then you do dozens, if not hundreds of hours of coaching, normally pro bono for free, in between each level of coaching to get up your required hours and your level of experience. That's also a really good test, because if you don't love it, you're going to drop out at that point. I loved every minute of it. I loved the training. I loved the practical element of it. I loved getting more experience. I loved the people that I met and the work that we were doing together. So training is probably the first thing. Second thing is you can't do something like this unless you have a really good support network. So you mentioned I'm really lucky to have a very, very supportive wife who could see that this was where my passion really lay. But she also could see it wasn't just about passion. There was also, I like to think, an element of capability and talent to do it as well. If we all chose our job purely on passion, we'd all be Formula One drivers or playing, centre forward for Liverpool. So you also have to have a certain level of capability and hopefully some sort of level of talent in doing it. And, as much as my wife has been incredibly supportive, and she has, I've also been very lucky to be supported by a lot of the people that I used to work with and people who used to work for me. One of the days that really changed my life is I was sitting with somebody that I used to work with, and I floated the idea that I might make a move into executive coaching. And she thought about it for about a quarter of a second and said to me, well, of course you should. Like, that's basically what you've done for the last 10 years.
Mm.
It's just that you've had a job title which said marketing director. And I said, what do you mean? She said, that was always the best part of working with you, was that you're an amazing coach. You really helped us to believe in our own abilities. You really helped us to understand who we were, our strengths and weaknesses, and how to best deploy those. You always gave us the sense that you actually genuinely cared about us being successful in our careers, not just our jobs in that context. And, you know, she is now a CMO of a very well-known telco.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, look, one of the reasons that I'm in this job now is because of all the things that I learned and the coaching that I got from you. And so it was, when you get feedback like that, you have to come to a point where you say, I've really got to stop fighting what's blindingly obvious, which is I am not perfect at everything, far from it. There are things that I have a degree of skill in, and there are things that I'm not well suited to. And so the irony was that the best way for me to make that decision was actually to go through the process of training to be an executive coach, because when you try all of this stuff on, you're going to find out whether you're making the right decision. So yeah, you've got to get the training, because it will teach you one way or the other if you're doing the right thing. You've got to have the support network, your family, and outside of that. And then the third thing is, just like everything in life, at some point, you have to make a decision. It really does come down to that. You have to make a decision, and you have to stick with the decision that you've made and give it a pretty good go, because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard.
You have touched on a few things there. Skill and capability being one, and the tenacity to actually sort of move forward and make those decisions. You've even touched on sort of marketing basics like testing and learning throughout the touching on your sort of coaching experience. Can you talk to the fundamentals that you have built over your career as a marketer that then apply now to your job, or even your sort of life skills as well?
That's a great question, because I think that when you really get into the detail, the similarities between marketing and coaching are pretty striking. If we think about what really marketing is all about, it's about research, which really revolves around understanding the market and the customer and what the customer wants, even if the customer doesn't know what they want. What are their motivating factors? What are their needs? What are their pain points? And then building either a business or a marketing strategy based on that opportunity. So many businesses have assumptions around what a customer wants, or they will talk for years about, well, our customers want this, and they've never done any research. They've never they don't have any qual or quant data that actually supports that. It's all based on the opinions of the people that work in the business, which is one of the things that makes marketing a really good challenge, is that you're constantly fighting other people's opinions of what you should be doing. What I think is so amazing about the coaching process is that we start with research, just like marketers do. We spend time with our clients understanding them fundamentally, what they want, what they're good at, what they like, what they don't, where their skills lie, where their passions lie, because everybody is different. Everybody is an individual. And then what we do is we shift and move our strategy, just like a marketer would, based on what we find out. Then what we do is, obviously, we come up with a plan. And just as much as when you're working in marketing, you're going to come up with a brand strategy, a comms plan, a creative platform, a set of tactics, execution channels, analysis, all of that great stuff that you learn and get trained in all the way through the marketing framework. In coaching, what we do is we base everything that we plan to do with the client based on what we learn in that first period of sort of diagnosis of what the opportunity is and what are the things holding that person back. And then what we do is we design, or at least I design a process that specifically fits that person. And it's very similar to what I used to do in marketing, which is you have to have the skills of empathy and listening and understanding to identify the opportunity to improve. Then you have to be able to put together a strategy and a plan and a set of tactics and a set of techniques that are going to get you to the desired outcome. And then you have to measure your progress and then analyze what you did and make it better. So fundamentally, there's so many similarities between the two processes. And it even shocked me as I was going through the training, just how similar the two processes are.
Great to hear those foundations of applying universally. I might switch things up a little bit, and I think you have started your business through a pretty interesting time where through COVID, people are really evaluating their ways of working, their values, and wanting to align their careers, with the right sort of company that fits their values. Can you talk through some of the common challenges you're seeing with your clients?
Absolutely. So one of the things that has been fascinating for me to experience over the last couple of years is just how similar everybody's challenges are. And what I would say is that there are a fundamental set of challenges that everybody is trying to grapple with right now. The first one is that abiding question, which is, what is it that I really want to do? I think when you're incredibly busy and you're commuting and you're getting the kids to school and you're paying the bills and you're writing KPI documents and managing campaigns and talking about CPAs and doing the classic sort of life and marketing things, you don't get any time to think about that. And then I think when something like COVID happens, you sit down and you do have a little bit more time and a little bit more perspective when you're faced with a deadly pandemic to ask yourself the question, hang on, where am I actually going? Like, what do I really want to do in my career? And I think the time to launch a business like this was an incredible opportunity because people were asking themselves that question and they really didn't know how to answer it. And I think people are asking themselves that question today, probably even more than when COVID started, because they've been through that experience and thought, wow, we kind of almost got away with that. It wasn't, as severe here in Australia as it was overseas. And I think we are naturally as humans reminded that life has limits and that there's only a certain amount of time that we're going to be working in our career, and we better work out what it is that we want to do and move in that direction, because there are no second chances. Once the time is gone, the time is gone. And, you and I both have children. We're very keenly aware of that, that, they grow up very, very quickly and you only have one shot at getting it right as a parent. It's the same thing in your career. Is you don't want to be in that position where you feel your career is passing you by. And the real source of frustration for a lot of people, particularly the people I talk to for obvious reasons, is they just don't know the answer to that question. They know that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They know that there's something missing. They know that they're not living out their full potential. They say it to me in so many different ways. They know that maybe they're not in the right role, or they don't have the right boss, or they don't have the right industry or the right organization. They know something is wrong, but they don't know what it is. And that's specifically why I designed my business to answer that question, which is, if you just take a step back and you say, let's look at the fundamental building blocks of who you are as a person, your values, your strengths, your fears, your personality traits, the things that you need on a daily basis to experience and feel happy and fulfilled, then we can answer that question. And that's why I think it's been so effective for the clients that I've been working with, is that they're answering this question for life. It's not a Band-Aid solution that says, I've got a tricky boss, or I've got a tricky coworker, or I've got, there's a problem with this business model, or I'm on the agency side and I want to go client, or client and I want to go agency, which is the perennial question. It's, hang on a second, who am I as a person, as an individual? What are the things that make me happy and fulfilled? And therefore, what lens does that put on actually a lot of options that I have in my career? Most people have a lot more options than they think. The reason that they don't take those options, or they don't have the confidence to make those jumps, is because they don't have, ironically, the kind of the qual and the quant data on themselves to be able to do it, which is why, there are so many similarities between the two things. One of my clients recently said to me, so basically your process is the diagnosis of the problem and then research on me to establish qual and quant data that we're going to use for decision making. And I said, yes, that's exactly what it is. It's just your career instead of a product that we're trying to sell or a service. And she said, well, I understand that, so let's just do it. And I think it's, sometimes it can be, a complicated thing to understand. But I think if you look at it like that, it's actually pretty easy. The irony is that as marketers, we are not trained to sell one thing. We're trained to sell any product you throw at us. We're trained to sell any service you can imagine. We are not trained to sell ourselves. And we're not really trained to use those techniques on ourselves. And, as much as you'd be able to, because, you cannot be objective when you're the subject. That's just not possible.
Yeah.
One of my clients said to me recently, you can't be your own dentist, Alex. And I thought, well, that's a good analogy, right? You can't. And the people that I work with, I'm taking them on a guided discovery of really who they are and what they want. It's not my opinion. I'm guiding them through a process that helps them to understand what they want. And then they know that they can make the right decision. Because the biggest thing that stops people from making the right decision about their future is not knowing what they want. And so they stay stuck because they have so many self-doubts about what they want. There's this wonderful phrase, which I have here stuck up in my home office, which says, self-doubt has killed 1,000,000 times more dreams than failure. And that couldn't be any more true when it comes to working with people on their career direction. Because what happens is that people are surrounded by choice, surrounded by options, some of which they see, some of which they don't, but they don't commit to a course of action because of this lingering self-doubt. And so what we do is we get the qual and the quant data and we tear that self-doubt out and we throw it away. Because once you've got the data, there is no more doubt. There is a clear direction in front of you. And you know whether you want to go agency or client, or whether you want to be a leader or an individual contributor, or whether you want to go and work in media or research or whatever it is. We never know the answer. We find the answer together as we go through the process. But when you get to the end of the process, you know what the answer is, and you don't have that lingering self-doubt anymore. It's actually replaced by confidence. It's replaced by commitment. It's replaced by, dare I say, excitement, as opposed to that kind of nagging feeling of, am I doing the right thing? Is this right for me? You can actually replace that with, wow, I'm excited. I know where I'm going. I'm feeling like I've got clarity and confidence. And that's everything when you're trying to set your career direction.
You're all in now, it sounds like. Any regrets?
Honestly, no.
Amazing.
I can't imagine that anything is going to create more positivity or more positive impact than what I'm doing right now. That's not to say that it's easy. It is incredibly hard, much harder than I thought it was going to be honest. I was probably optimistic to the point of naivety of how easy it was going to be. But I don't think it's possible for anybody to push through the hard challenges and the hard times unless they have the level of motivation that's going to actually push them through it. And, all through my career, I've always said to people that the thing that fulfills me the most selfishly and that I get the most value and meaning from was in helping to develop other people. Now, I didn't always do a brilliant job at it. I've made just as many mistakes as everybody else has.
Mm.
Since I've had all of the executive coach training, I like to think I'm making vastly fewer mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm certainly getting the feedback that would suggest that. But when you get a text message from one of your clients saying, oh my God, I just presented the annual plan that we worked on together and I got a promotion and a pay rise, that's a great feeling. Selfishly, that's a great feeling. They're getting something great. You're getting something great. It's an amazing experience. When you get a text message from a client saying, I finally made the decision and I am going to go after this dream that I've always had, that I've only really revealed after I've been working with you. I don't regret it for a moment, because I think that when I get to the end of my career, I personally will measure my career by the impact that I've been able to have on other human beings and what they've been able to achieve with my help. And that's not how everybody measures their career. Some people will measure it on seniority or income or job title, and that's totally fine because everybody is different. But I know that that's the way that I measure. And therefore, that's why I'm so committed to this path.
My last question to you, and we always close off with this one, is this podcast is all about being future fit. So are there any other tips? You have given plenty today already, but any other tips, resources that you always go to keep yourself future fit?
I think there's some practical things. And then I think there are some sort of inspirational things. So you need to have some practical support around you. You've got to have a good support system. If you're a small business owner, it's a tough job. I think you have to be committed to nonstop learning. If you want to become better at what you do, whether you're a marketer, a coach, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever you do for a living, you have to be totally committed to being better at what you do on a daily basis. You learn from the people that you work with, and you do. I've learned more from the people that I work with than anybody. But you also need to be committed to reading the right books, listening to the right podcasts. The way that I fit it into my life is when I walk the dog, I listen to an audiobook or a podcast. And that means that I get 40 to 60 minutes of learning every single day. And that really helps me to keep on top of all of the emerging trends in coaching psychology, all of the new tools that are being developed, a lot of the industry conversations around the role of coaching in organizations and in careers, and a lot of the emerging science in psychology and coaching psychology and beyond. The other thing is, I think people need to remember when there was a prompt from I don't know, life, fate, the universe, whatever you want to call it, that was going to push you in this direction anyway. I remember about 10 years ago having a conversation with an HR director, and she made a comment to me which I've never understood until recently. She said to me, you're spending too much time developing your people, and they keep leaving to get a better job with a promotion. And she was using it to actually criticize me. Yeah. She was saying that I should develop my people less because then they would stay. It's a bit like the old job about the CFO who says, what if we spend all of this money on staff development and everybody leaves? Mm-hmm. And the CEO says, well, what if we spend all of this money on staff development and they stay? Right? It's the same thing. It's hang on a second. When did developing people, building their self-awareness, building their levels of confidence, building their levels of clarity, building their levels of self-efficacy, actually, when was that ever a bad thing? And if somebody works here and they develop and then they leave to go and get a better job somewhere else, how is that a bad thing? As long as we're retaining enough IP in our business, we're going to be building a reputation for our business as being an amazing place to come and work, and you're actually going to get something out of it. And I fundamentally disagreed with that. And all through my career, there were experiences like that. There are experiences where people would say, I've got a new job, I got promoted, and I got this huge pay rise. Thank you so much for everything that you've taught me. And I would think, well, that's awesome. If someone's going to leave your organization, and in these days of high churn, people are going to leave your organization, just make sure they're leaving for the right reason. Yes. And the right reason should be that they've learned so much, they're going to go and do something even more awesome. If they stay in your organization, that's awesome. That's fantastic. But if they are going to leave, make sure it's because they've learned so much, they're capable of doing more. And I was such a fierce advocate of that throughout my entire career. It goes back to what my old colleague told me, which was I was acting like an executive coach in my job for 10 years before I actually started a coaching company.
Absolutely.
I just had to get out of my own way and actually realize where I had enough talent and capability and interest to do something different, and then just commit, make a decision and run with it. Yes, it's going to be hard, and yes, it's going to be tricky, but at some point you just have to back yourself and do it. And the irony is that I spend most of my time telling people exactly the same thing, which is identify what you're amazing at, because everybody's great at something. Identify the things that are holding you back. Identify what you want. And then with my help, bring that together, because then the direction is so clear. You go to the second question, which is, well, how do I do it? But that question is never as difficult to answer as the what do I want question. And you can't do the how, and you can't do the strategy and the tactics until you've answered the why. And that's, us marketers, we know that. We know that you have to answer the why. And we fight for the why on a daily basis. And we go and have those conversations with the executive team, and we fight for the purpose and the meaning of what we're doing. And that's what I continue to do every single day. I'm just doing it in a different context.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was so insightful. I'm feeling your positive energy, and I'm feeling that career change was absolutely the right thing for you. And I think, I hope the listeners are really getting a jolt around perspective and around evaluating themselves after hearing from you. So thank you for jumping on. Really appreciate your insights.
Thank you, Amanda. It was great to talk to you today. And I send all of my best to all of your listeners. Thanks, Amanda.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard, share this podcast series with someone else. And thanks for paying it forward.